What's up, everybody? Thank you very much for joining us here today on Review and Preview Sports with a very special guest. And he's a recurring guest, Vinny Milani from the Sac City podcast and huge Jacksonville Jaguars fan. Vinny, how are you doing today? And congratulations on Saturday night.
Feeling good. Still trying to get over that big day on Saturday. I think this is the nice halfway point. That Wednesday is right when you start to look towards and start being nervous about the upcoming game. And you're still trying to get over what happened on Saturday. It's still you're at that midpoint. So still getting over the excitement, getting ready to be nervous once again on Saturday. But excited to talk some Jaguars football.
And folks, before we dive into this exclusive interview with Vinny, if you're new, nice cat, by the way.
I live in a zoo. That will probably not be the first and only cat sighting you see.
That's
awesome. If you see a dog, you'll see that. I live in a zoo.
That's awesome. Folks, if you're new, make sure to go check us out on all of our social media, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. We're on TikTok as well at Review and Preview. We'll have that scrolling across for a minute or so. But Vinny, first question for you. The Jaguars shocked the Chargers 31-30. Chargers led 27-0. You outscore them 24-3 in the second half. One of the biggest collapses in playoff history. It leads to the firing of offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi, Shane Day. Now, I messaged you Saturday night in the middle of this game when you were down by multiple possessions, and you mentioned your team needed a miracle. Take us through your head during the game from when you were down 27-0 up until the very end, and what this means for Duval. I know it's a loaded question, but
hey, it's all good. I mean, it was huge, and it was just that. It was a miracle. It was I was down pretty bad. I was down pretty bad in the office on Saturday night. That was my first time watching a big, very important game at work at CBS, and there were guys around us, anchors, analysts. They were all. One of them specifically was chirping a lot throughout the night, pulling for the Chargers, and obviously down 27-0. I don't have much to say. I don't have much to say, but you guys are the better team, and there's always next year, and all the cliches of the Jaguars playing with house money. We weren't supposed to be here. We'll build on this, and I was like, okay, I'm just focusing on the future. And I had a lot of coworkers come up to me and say, it's not over yet, and I was like, I'd rather you not tell me that because I don't like to get false hope. I'd rather just be let down easy. And then they started climbing back, and I'm like, they're going to give me false hope. I'm going to get hooked back in, and they're going to let me down in the end. And they didn't. And it was amazing. It was I had the roller coaster of emotions throughout the game, especially in that second half. But when you look at it at the overall point of view of the Jacksonville Jaguars franchise, I think it's easily the biggest game and the biggest time in the franchise since its inception in the 95. I mean, it's right now. I think for the organization and the team, you've seen them be in the playoff situations before. You've seen it with Leftwich and Garrard. You've seen it with Bortles most recently. This time feels different because you have your franchise quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. And when you look back at those previous playoff trips with guys like Bortles and Garrard, you're looking at those quarterback situations and you're like, okay, we're not supposed to really be here. We're very fortunate. Hopefully we can get back in the coming years, but you don't have that much trust you don't have that building block quarterback there. Right now we do. And there's so much hope and potential on the horizon for the Jaguars. And when you look at moments like these, you're like, okay, this is it. This is like the first step towards us becoming what a lot of people are saying, a perennial playoff team, which would be great. I've never seen the Jaguars in multiple playoffs, multiple years in a row. And that I've never really seen them be a perennial playoff team like we're supposed to be there. So it's a very big time in Jacksonville, and it's a great time to be a Jaguars fan. If you're not on board with us now, hop on now. It's gonna be a ride.
Yeah, I'll tell you, as a Giants fan, I've always had a soft spot for you guys. We have the Tom Coughlin connection. So I was very excited for you guys on Saturday night. First playoff win since 2017. Talk about the coaching job that Doug Peterson did. Trevor Lawrence threw 4 interceptions, not in the game, not in the half, in the first quarter, essentially. Talk about the coaching job Doug Peterson did, specifically after Lawrence threw those first 4 interceptions. Because to me, at least, Vinny, it seemed like they were playing it safe for a while. They're throwing shorter passes to open up back down the field again to help regain his confidence.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we talked about in episodes before when I talked about the Jaguars and the season with Doug Peterson is he brings that culture change and he brings a belief in the locker room and he brings a belief to his players that you can trust his systems that he has to move you forward and even when you're down that much and when you've thrown that many interceptions and you're at the lowest of lows, you trust the process and saying, okay, we're still in this. We can still come back from this. And when you look at Trevor Lawrence after those 4 interceptions in the first quarter, I mean, he was perfect. 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 23 of 29 through the air after they went down. I mean, it was Trevor Lawrence not only finding those checkdowns and simplifying his game, but seeing the field a little bit different after they went down big. And again, it goes down to Doug Peterson's system that he has and the trust and the belief that the players have in the play calling. And when you look at the plays that were called, I mean, you talk about the 4th down play, the 4th and 1 to set up the game-winning field goal with Travis Etienne. I mean, that's what Doug Peterson did for the Jaguars was he stuck to his system, he stuck to his original game plan. And that's what kept Trevor Lawrence comfortable. He didn't ask Trevor Lawrence to throw for 50 times in the game. He didn't need him to. And that was the biggest thing when it comes to keeping Trevor Lawrence in check, even after throwing 4 first quarter interceptions.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it was probably a combination of playoff nerves and the Chargers defense playing very well. I mean, Asante Samuel Jr., outstanding young corner. But credit to Trevor Lawrence. We all saw the Waffle House clip after the game.
Yep.
Late at night. That's one way to celebrate, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But Vinny, it seems like the role players also deserve a lot of credit. Travis Etienne, like you mentioned, Evan Ingram had a touchdown. Christian Kirk had a touchdown. I mean, Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, even Dan Arnold helping pass protect, in the blocking formations. It just seems like everybody did their job. And I'm just super duper impressed. And I feel like that is the difference between a team that started 2-6 this season through the end of October up until now. Would you say the role players are possibly the biggest difference of this team from 2-6 until now?
Oh yeah, I mean, you look at the weapons that Trevor Lawrence has around him now, as opposed to what he had last year. I mean, I remember coming on here and talking to you about how the Jaguars last season was just full of a bunch of special teamers. When you look at the roster and you look at the pass catchers around Trevor Lawrence, I mean, when Jamal Agnew is one of your one of your go-to receivers and your number one weapon, you're not going to win many ball games. And that's not a shot at Jamal Agnew. It's just he's a great special teams guy, and he's that type of guy where he can impact a game through the special teams. He's not going to be your number one wide receiver. And when you add in everyone around Trevor Lawrence, of like your Christian Kirk, your Zay Jones, your Marvin Jones, it really gives him a supporting cast that he needs. Now, I'm not going to go out and say that this is the cast that like a Josh Allen has around him, or the other quarterback like Jalen Hurts or even Justin Herbert in the same game. It's not on that level, but again, it comes back to the Doug Peterson system that he has. And I'm not sure if anyone watching, or if I'm sure you've seen the movie Miracle, right?
Yes.
Herb Brooks in that movie says, when he's picking the initial Team USA roster, he says he's not looking for the best players, he's looking for the right players. When you saw Christian Kirk get that big deal in the offseason, you're like, oh my God, why did he get that? But now you're seeing that it's the system that Doug Peterson has, and it's not about the best players, it's about the ones that fit the most for what Doug Peterson is calling. And I think Trevor Lawrence and everyone around him has been big benefactors from that. You saw Zay Jones connect with the big touchdown in this game. I mean, you look at the development of Trevor Lawrence in general with the weapons that he has, even slightly better ones. And again, no one's like, oh, Christian Kirk's the best wide receiver in the NFL. No one's looking at Zay Jones like that either. And Trevor Lawrence, after they went 2-6, 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions after that 2-6 starts, he's been perfect since then. And it comes down to the supporting cast he has around him being the right guys, not the best guys, but the right ones for Doug Peterson's system.
I do agree. I think, after those 4 picks, he needed to be perfect the rest of the game for Jacksonville to have a chance. And he did exactly that. But switching gears here, Vinny, to this weekend, you have the first game on this weekend slate at Arrowhead against the Chiefs, a place that you played at earlier this season. You lost to them 27-17, despite the Chiefs being 7-1 at home. Can the Jaguars take away anything from that game back in Week 10 and use it to their advantage this time around?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that game specifically, you talk about how, I really first want to preface this by saying that the playoffs are a different beast, that no matter what happened in Week 10, it's not this Chiefs team is going to be a lot different than then. It's just things are different and elevated when it comes to the playoffs. When you look at that game specifically, the Jaguars were +3 in the turnover battle in that game. Like that, they were forcing the turnovers that they needed to. They just weren't able to capitalize on it. And when you look at that game specifically, you're like, okay, you have to be able to, when you're playing a team like Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, you have to be able to capitalize on those mistakes that they make, because it's not going to be a lot, but when they do, you have to punish them. If you leave them in the game long enough, they're going to make you pay. And that's pretty much what happened in that game, because like I said, you win in the turnover battle, you should have a good chance at winning, and they still lost. When you look at that game deeper though, I think in this situation, you have to, you can't get down. You cannot get down in this game. And they ended up getting down in that Week 10 battle and weren't able to come back. And because they will make you pay, like I said. And I'm not sure that there's a whole lot to take away that you can bring into this game, because like I said, things are a little different when the playoffs roll around. But that turnover differential, you have to try and build on that and take from what you did in that game to this game.
And Andre Sisco is a big part of that. Had a pick in that game. Defensively, the defense has been a big part of this run. Oluokun, those linebackers that you have, Trayvon Walker, Robertson Harris, Josh Allen, everybody has contributed. They look stellar in the second half against the Chargers. What would you say is the key to getting pressure on Patrick Mahomes? Because despite the 3 turnovers you forced, he also did have 4 touchdown passes.
Yeah. I mean, Mahomes is going to Mahomes. That's kind of the way you have to look at it when you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs. You're not going to be able to completely stop Patrick Mahomes. It's just not it. But when you look at when Patrick Mahomes has struggled this season, and you look at the 3 of their 4 losses this year, it's when Patrick Mahomes isn't actually blitzed, when you're not sending extra guys to blitz Patrick Mahomes, because that's when he'll make you pay. And the Jaguars this season have done a good job at getting to the quarterback without sending the whole house to get to them. 3 of the 4 losses for Patrick Mahomes, he was 22nd. He had 22nd percent. Hold on, let me remember this stat here to present here, because I was like, you know what has stood out about Patrick Mahomes in those losses? 22nd in passer rating when pressured without a blitz. That's what it was. You don't have to send the house, because again, he's Patrick Mahomes. He will make you pay if you bring in extra guys to him. Keeping it simple on Patrick Mahomes will be huge. Jaguars in that Week 10 matchup, like we were just talking about, blitz just 5% of the time. So they have to continue doing that type of style to Patrick Mahomes, because he will make you pay if you bring extra guys to him, especially the wide receivers that he has, which we can also get into. It's just keep it simple when game planning for Patrick Mahomes, because if you overthink it, he'll make you pay.
That's an insane stat, 5% of the time.
Yeah.
Now, they do have a lot of weapons that we know, but obviously, I think you guys have a lot of weapons as well. You mentioned players who fit the scheme, that fit the system that Doug Peterson wants to instill. Um, how does Trevor Lawrence exploit this Chiefs defense? Because I think the one weakness this year is their defense just has not been great at all.
Yeah, when you look at Patrick, or when you look at exploiting that defense for the Kansas City Chiefs, you're right, it hasn't looked good at all. But at the end of the day, you have to make them look just like that, because in the playoffs, they could turn up. And that's what actually happened when they won the Super Bowl that year. We did look at the Chiefs defense like it was their weakness, and they ended up being one of the biggest bright spots of that team on that Super Bowl run for the Chiefs. So you have to make them look just like that. That may be a simple term, but it's easier said than done. Like I said before, you cannot turn the ball over on this team because they will make you pay. And that's the biggest thing. You can't give Patrick Mahomes extra chances. You can't fall behind. I guarantee you, if the Jaguars fall behind 27-0 like they did against the Chargers, they have a 0% chance of winning against Patrick Mahomes. And when you look at the offense specifically, and what we talked about with Doug Peterson and trusting the process, well, what is that process? Sticking to what got you here with all of the creativity that Doug Peterson has had with the offense. Even you look at Doug Peterson when he was with the Eagles, the Philly special, the creativity, getting guys in motion. The Jaguars this season were second in the league this year in touches and scrimmage yards to players in motion. They like to get creative. They like to get movement. Stay in that system, and you're going to be able to have success against this defense. Guys like Travis Etienne have to be involved. Evan Ingram, those guys have to be big parts in this. And like I said, it's just sticking to that process and do not get away from that, because that's what had the Jaguars down 27-0 against the Chargers in the wild card round.
And I think, keeping that Chiefs offense off the field, very, very important as well. Now, players to watch on both sides, Vinny. You mentioned a few minutes ago Mahomes' weapons, his wide receivers. Who are you keying in on in this game for both teams?
It's the Travises. It is the Travises in this game that I have my eyes on, starting with Travis Kelce, of course, with the Kansas City Chiefs. I know they do have some big time weapons. Jerick McKinnon has been able to find the end zone in, I think, 6 straight games. He's been a big factor, but I think it always comes down to Travis Kelce as neutralizing him for the Kansas City Chiefs, and to watch for them the last 6 postseason games for Kelce. He's had no less than 95 yards in those 6 games, and he's only had 1 game without a touchdown. And in that same game, he still had 133 yards. So Travis Kelce in the postseason is a different beast. He's a problem for the Jaguars as well. When you look at that game in week 10, 6 receptions, 81 yards and a touchdown. Jaguars giving up the 3rd most yards and receptions to the tight end position. Travis Kelce is the be-all, end-all for watching for when you're looking at the Chiefs offense and with Patrick Mahomes. The connection. We all know it's historical. They're easily one of the best duos to ever play the game. And limiting Travis Kelce is going to be huge for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now you look at the other side, the other Travis in this game. Travis Etienne has to be effective on the ground. Early on in the Chargers game, you saw one of the biggest problems for this team was that Travis Etienne was not able to actually move the ball forward when given the chance, at least in the first half. Second half, he was able to find that, and it was the difference maker in that game. But like you said before, it's got to be about controlling the game and keeping the ball out of Mahomes' hands. How do you do that? You give the ball to Travis Etienne, who has been a pretty effective runner this season. He's going to open up things in the passing game for Trevor Lawrence if they can get that value from him in the running game. And then one other player to watch for, an honorable mention here, and I don't mean to insult you. I don't mean to bring back bad memories, but Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram has to be relevant in this game. In week 10, 3 receptions for 14 yards. He was pretty much irrelevant in that game. He saw 69% route running. He had a 69% target share or route share in that week 10 matchup, which is not good. Evan Ingram has to be on the field. Evan Ingram has to be involved in route running. He has to be a weapon, an option for Trevor Lawrence. That's what's going to be huge. I know he had a tough time with the Giants, but he has become a major part of this Jaguars offense. When he's running routes, when he's on the field, he's a game changer, whether he's getting the ball or not. Doug Peterson has a scheme for him that makes defenses have to worry about him, which then opens up things for guys like Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. So the honorable mention is Evan Ingram. The guys to really watch for are the Travises, and Travis Etienne and Travis Kelce.
I like that because when Ingram was on the Giants, he'd be running 5 to 7 yard hitch routes under Jason Garrett, and he'd be dropping passes, and everyone's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
And that was happening for essentially 3 or 4 years. I know he was a Giant for 5 years, but just throwing a little 2 cents there.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's Chris Jones is one key guy we haven't talked about yet for Kansas City. I think you mentioned being able to run the football, and I think Brandon Scherf and rookie center Luke Fortner are going to have their hands full with Chris Jones up front. We know how good he can be in the run game and rushing the passer. I expect him to be in Trevor Lawrence's face a lot. So if Scherf and Fortner, and I'm trying to think of who the other guard is. He's slipping my – it's not Walker Little. I know he plays left tackle.
I'm pretty sure it's Tyler Shatley.
Shatley, yes.
If I remember correctly, that's who. Because our
Taylor's
offensive line has had some injuries.
Some makeup,
yeah. Yeah, because right now we're without Cam Robinson. We've got Walker Little there as the starting left tackle, but I'm pretty sure it's Tyler Shatley at the other guard spot. Not
to digress here, whatever happened to Ben Barch?
He just was never a thing. He got a lot of attention in the draft, but it was never
the protein shakes never worked.
Yeah. And it is, and I did just want to look it up just to make sure I didn't sound like a clown here. It is Tyler Shatley as the other guard there for the Jags.
I think getting the run game going early this time is going to be huge, and Josh Allen.
Yep.
Josh Allen on defense, him and Trayvon Walker, those two, they need to pressure Patrick Mahomes so that you're right. You don't want to be bringing extra guys, and you don't want to make it a blitzkrieg like the Giants do with Link Martindale every week. You want to find ways to get to Mahomes with the 3 to 4 man rush, which is tough because they have a great offensive line. Orlando Brown, Creed Humphrey, Joe Thuney. I mean, I'm not sure if Thuney's still hurt or not, but I mean, all these guys that the Chiefs have are really good offensive linemen. So I think those guys up front, you want to get pressure. And then, of course, Andre Sisco, I'm a big fan of his. Syracuse guy, from up north here. So, maybe he can make a play or two. But I think if those things happen, the Jaguars have a legit shot in this game because it is a different animal. It is the playoffs. And I'll argue this. The Chiefs' defense is worse than it was last year even, especially second half of the season. I know they were winning games, but, I mean, it speaks volumes to how much Patrick Mahomes is an MVP caliber type player, right? Because they're
Yeah. I mean, you look that defense has been. I compared it or brought up their Super Bowl run and how their defense was their weakness then, but in the playoffs they turned it up. They're missing a lot of those guys. It's not the same team there. You got a lot of younger guys on that team. You look at the pass rush, and George Karlaftis is there, Jalen Watts in the corner, and Trent McDuffie there, 2 rookies in the corner spot. There's no Tyrann Mathieu there anymore, so it's definitely not the same defense that they had when they were winning the Super Bowl. But still, the coaching staff for Kansas City is what stands out, and that they're going to be ready to go. For Jacksonville, I worry about this game being I don't want to say the letdown game, because like I said before, the Jaguars are playing with house money right now. Like we exceeded expectations, similar to your Giants. Like the bar was set lower, much lower than where both teams are at. And when you look at this game, you're like, okay, the Chiefs that's where you want to be. That's where you're shooting to be. And the Jaguars, I worry about them not being quite there yet.
Yeah, I do agree, and I just want to confirm this with you before we do our game predictions here, score prediction. Monteric Brown, is that your CB2 right now? I was looking at the depth chart before
The
we logged on.
the
Who
Jaguars.
is? Yeah, who starts opposite of Campbell?
So so they have Tyson Campbell and Trey Herndon.
Okay,
Those are two of the main corners. Then we have Darius Williams, who they signed
that's
this past
right.
off
Forgot
season
him.
from the Rams. He's actually a Jacksonville guy.
It's a good
But yeah, I
addition.
mean, it's been a lot of Tyson Campbell, a lot of Trey Herndon, and that's that worry. I mean, it's been with some of the big Jaguars wins. You look at some of the teams they've been playing. Dak Prescott, the Cowboys, that high-powered offense of CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup and those guys, they allowed a lot of points there, but they also put up a lot of points. And last week against Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert, still allowed a lot of points, but they
Hmm.
also scored a lot of points. And I see more of the same from this Chiefs game. And I mean, you brought up the guys right there: Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen, Roy Robertson, Harris. Those guys have to get at the quarterback. You can't send extra guys because Patrick Mahomes is going to make you pay, and those guys have to ball out. And I think that the Jaguars are going to need the one type of play like we saw in the Titans game or the Cowboys game, where it was a pick six from Rayshon Jenkins or a scoop and score from Josh Allen. I think they're going to need that here on Saturday.
Final question: who's winning and what's the score?
I always hate predicting Jaguar games. I always hate predicting my own team's games.
Yeah,
But for you, I'm going to do it.
appreciate
For you, I'm
it.
going to do it. And like I said, it was a little foreshadowing to my prediction here. I worry about the Jaguars not being quite there yet with the level of the Kansas City Chiefs. And you look back at those wins that the Jaguars had, all those comeback wins. Doug Peterson has been able to bring them back from the dead. 3 17-point comeback wins this season. Well, you're not playing the Ravens. You're not playing the Cowboys. You're not playing the Chargers. You're playing Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and the Kansas City Chiefs, and you're not going to be able to do that against that type of team here in the playoffs at Arrowhead. I'll take the Chiefs here, 33-21. Chiefs. I don't like to think of it as a big blowout type of game. I think the Jaguars stay tight with them the whole time, but I think some costly turnovers and not being able to make the Chiefs pay at the end of the day will haunt the Jaguars and will send us packing and looking forward to next season.
So you got 33-21. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm picking Kansas City. Not saying that's what I want. Obviously, I think Vinny and we both want the same thing to happen in this game. Yeah, I'm going Kansas City here. I might go a tad underneath you. I'm going to go Chiefs 31, Jaguars 20. I think that'll be the final score. Similar score, but again, like you mentioned, Chiefs are a different animal in the playoffs. Andy Reid and Doug Peterson, very similar head coaches. That's another key factor we didn't mention, but that could come into effect here as well. You never know. You never know what could happen, and that's why we play the games, right?
Yeah, and you brought it up right there. It's like you look at the coaching, and I brought up their 17-point comeback wins. I mean, you look at the coaches. John Harbaugh is a great coach, but I mean, he's not Andy Reid. And you look at the other coaches that the Jaguars today have been able to do these comebacks on. It's been Mike McCarthy, Brandon Staley. You played Josh Dobbs at quarterback. You didn't look that great in that game in Week 18, but you still got the job done off that scoop and score against Josh Dobbs. You're not playing against Dobbs. You're not coaching against Mike McCarthy. You are up against the best team in one of the best teams in football in terms of the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think that it's been a good run, and I'm excited for next year. But hey, I will be happy to be wrong in this situation.
Absolutely, and wish you the best of luck Saturday, Vinny. But before you go, where can people find you and your work over at Sac City?
Yeah, so you can find the great the Sac City Podcast at the Sac City Pod on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all those social media platforms. Primarily on YouTube at the Sac City Pod. Make sure you hit that subscribe button when you pop over there. We've got a lot of great content. Right now, we are actually in a little bit of a break. Right now, over the past few weeks, my buddy Aaron, my co-host, who's been a large part of the show. He's been covering the national championship out in LA. So he's been tied up there, and I have been worried about my Jaguars and grinding away over here. So we've kind of taken a few weeks off, but we will be back and ready for the Super Bowl. So be sure to follow us at the Sac City Pod on all social media platforms and on YouTube.
Awesome, Vinny. Thank you so much for your time. He's Vinny Milani. I'm Tom Scavetta, and appreciate you all watching this video here. And best of luck to your Jaguars on Saturday.
Thank you.